Duke football is going to a bowl game. They are bowl eligible after their victory last Friday night against Boston College. In the first year of the Mike Elko era, Duke already has 6 wins with 3 games left on the schedule. Unbelievable job. Let's talk about all of that on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. It's so great to have you here with us on this Thursday. What a fun show we've got planned for you today here on Locked On Blue Devils, as we're going to be talking about Duke football. They're bowl eligible, 6 wins on the year for Mike Elko and company, and we're going to break it all down, what the win meant over Boston College and what's ahead to close out the regular season for our Duke Blue Devils. On the gridiron, my buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast will be riding shotgun with us here on the show today. If you haven't done so already, again, make sure you subscribe to this podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Your support means the absolute world when you listen and endorse Locked On Blue Devils. You can watch the show daily, each and every day on YouTube. Subscribe there as well. Our goal, we're continuing to push towards 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube platform. It would be amazing to make that happen. Share the channel with your friends. Subscribe 5 days a week. We're bringing you the best content out there, the only daily podcast that you could find devoted to the life of Duke athletics. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and we'll bring in my good pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Josh, I hope you're doing well, and I know everybody's got to be feeling good about the fact that the Duke football squad is bowl eligible.
Here we sit 9 games into the season and already bowl eligible. So 3 more games left. What a great feat, man, for Mike Elko and for that whole program. Just pretty incredible to see those how quickly the turnaround has happened for sure.
What did you think of the Boston College game? Give me your big takeaways. Friday night football, going back to the start of the year, Duke had a Friday night game, but had that conference Friday night slot with a lot of the country being able to watch Duke football. What'd you make of their performance against Boston College?
Well, I mean, judging from our past, we don't do well in those primetime slots, to be honest with you. And so coming away with a win was great, and it was an ugly win. I mean, let's be honest. The defense kind of let us down a little bit in the second half. Made stops when they had to at the end, for sure. The Darius Joyner sack, the Shaka Hayward sack, things like that. But it was not a pretty game by any stretch of the imagination. Our secondary was exploited a little bit in this game. A different rotation back there. You saw a couple of guys getting more snaps than usual, and I don't know that that's going to happen anymore moving forward. I think Coach Elko got asked about it in a roundabout way 2 or 3 different times in his presser, and so I think they get the drift that people were kind of scratching their head about those defensive rotations. So who knows? Joshua Pickett didn't get as many snaps, and other guys did. So we'll see what happens on that. But yeah, I thought it was a little bit of a sloppy game, to be honest with you. Giving up 31 points, was a little suspect. But then again, we're running the ball well. We put up 38 points. There's not one logical Duke fan who's like, oh man, I don't like that. We won by 7 on the road in the ACC on a Friday night. We'll take it.
38-31, the final score. Duke is now 6-3 on the season. Riley Leonard at quarterback for Duke, 16 of 24 for 158 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Leonard also ran for 96 yards and a rushing score. Again, I mean, Drake May is stealing every headline in the conference, and rightfully so. At North Carolina, he's doing sensational things this season. But Riley Leonard has been so impressive this year. And you look, to be successful, there are multiple people on this team that you have to praise, but we've seen it over the last few years, Josh. If you don't have a quarterback, I'm sorry, you're just not winning games when it matters most.
Yeah, and Riley Leonard, you can't say enough about the kid. I mean, he's 4th in the conference in QBR right now after being projected to be the lowest quarterback in the conference this year. 4th in the conference of that. He's 4th nationally in rushing yardage from the quarterback position, 4th nationally. So, I mean, he has been very productive. And here's the best part about it, JJ. And once again, it's very difficult for fans to the word perspective is sometimes very difficult. Remember, this is a quarterback position at Duke that had turned the ball over for the last 3 seasons, previous seasons, whether it was fumbles, whether it was interceptions. I mean, this quarterback position, we definitely did not value the football like we ought to. And Riley doesn't turn the ball over. He does a really good job of throwing the ball away when he needs to throw the ball away, living to play another down. It's okay. And so sometimes that does mess with your completion percentage, but I would much rather have a lower completion percentage and no picks than, what I mean, to have a higher completion percentage, but have thrown, 7 or 8 picks on the season. So
no doubt.
I think there's all credit in the world is going to go to Riley Leonard. I think he's earning that leadership role in the locker room as well, and the players just love him.
So impressive. Again, Duke now with 6 wins on the season. They look forward to the last 3 games of the year, and it's been a great play from the offense. Riley's been amazing. But going back to that Boston College game in particular as well, Duke as a team, you factor in Riley Leonard's efforts, 41 carries for 232 yards. That's an average of 5.7 yards per carry. That's massive. And 4 rushing scores. To again, talk about that a little bit, Josh. I mean, that's over halfway to a first down every time that you're running the football, which is so productive to be that efficient on the ground game.
Well, certainly the breakout run by Riley helps your yards per carry for sure. But, I mean, we were definitely I don't know what our stats are, and I know the advanced metrics are out there, but, I just don't see us getting stopped behind the line that much. It's we always are, moving forward in the running back position, and also is a testament to this running back by committee. I mean, Friday night in Chestnut Hill, we saw Jordan Waters, who got banged up a little bit, but we saw him run the ball well. Jaquez Moore running the ball well, had a few instances of Terry Moore as well in the game, running the ball well. And so we're doing all of this as a reminder to Duke fans without Jalen Coleman, our number 1 running back. And so I can't say enough. I mean, we are only behind Florida State in yards per game rushing, and I think we're only behind them by 4 yards. And so we may be able to catch them by the end of the season these next 3 weeks. I would love to lead the league in rushing. That would just be a really awesome feat.
Yeah, no, we'll see if Duke's able to hold on to that and make that happen for sure. We'll talk a little bit more about Duke football after our first break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by Upside. Inflation has us all thinking about different ways to cut back. Whether it's driving less, dining out less, or buying less from the grocery store, we can all agree there's nothing fun about less. We want more. That's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With Upside, I don't have to cut back because I get cash back on every purchase. To get started, download the free Upside app. Use my promo code LOCKED, LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Check in at the business pay as usual with a credit or debit card and get paid. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. Download the free Upside app and use promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Promo code LOCKED, LOCKED, Upside, a proud sponsor of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. Welcome back into Locked On Blue Devils. I'm JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. All right, what's the outlook for Duke? Big picture. 3 games left in the year. They're now bowl eligible. What does it look like for the Blue Devils?
Well, if you think back to 2012, the Jamison Crowder catch against UNC sent Duke to a bowl game, but there were 4 games remaining in that season, and Duke wound up going 0-4 to close that season out. And so the question mark now is, to borrow the term that Coach Elko has been using, how greedy do they want to get in November? And so the question now becomes, is this team satisfied with 6 wins and going to a nominal bowl? or do they want to see what they can do and what they can put together? I obviously believe it's the second, the latter there. When you have leaders on this team like Shaka Hayward and Dwayne Carter, when you have guys like that, as we look forward, I believe they're going after that 9-win season, man. They're going after that, finish these last 3 games off. Now, as someone who's trying to be logical, I think if you break down these last 3 games, you have a should win, you have a 50-50, and then you have a could win. That's the way I look at it. You have your should win Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
You have a 50-50 toss-up with Pitt, man. You never know what team's going to show up.
Right.
I don't know how that line is going to look. That's going to be a weird one for Vegas to figure out as well. And then the Wake Forest one. I mean, the question with Wake Forest is which Sam Hartman shows up, like which offense shows up, because they can look really good like a top 10 team in the country one week. And then, Hartman the last 2 weeks has really, really struggled. And so, who knows? I will say this. I believe we will be in every one of these 3 games as we close the season out, for sure.
Which is amazing. I mean, the fact that we're talking about this for Duke in year 1 of the Mike Elko era, we didn't see this coming, Josh. We didn't think it would hit right away in the first year, man.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, we were cautioned by everyone from the top down. I mean, Nina King all the way down to hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's make sure we're patient. Let's set realistic expectations. And man, they've blown them out of the water. It's a testimony. Coach Elko mentioned it this Monday in his presser, this past Monday. Really, the transfer portal really did Duke well. Duke. He said they were 7 for 7 in the transfer portal. Like every guy they brought in has been really beneficial and helpful. And he's like, it's not always that way. And so that's been a big deal. We've been able to really turn over some things quickly. The offensive line, when you do add Chance Lytle and Dre Harris, who now are starters every game on that line, if those guys weren't there, that line's not nearly as strong. Darius Joyner and Speedy Young, our secondary is nowhere near what it is right now without the transfer portal. So you got Nelson on the line, Cam Dillon at linebacker, just providing depth. And so that's been really the key, in my opinion, is that we've really done well quality-wise in the transfer portal. And it's allowed Coach Elko and his coaching staff to turn this program around a lot quicker than what people expected.
Okay, so now we're 9 games into the year. Those 3 games left. You get to play a bowl game. So 4 total games left on the season for Duke. When you look at this team, they're banged up. They got to be. You've played 9 games worth of football. Health-wise, where's Duke at, Josh? What are some of the updates that might stand out this week?
No, great question. So Jacob Monk was lost for the season.
That was the big one, yeah.
Yeah, and it happened early in the game at Boston College, and he continued playing on it. In fact, Coach Elko, well, this is kind of a little off-the-record stuff, but it's all good. The members of the coaching staff noticed it after the game that he was kind of limping around. Even I'm talking about after the locker room, even going to the bus. And so it's not until he got back, I don't think, until he got back to Durham, possibly even that they were able to diagnose anything. And there's no official diagnosis there. It was just they saw him limping, and he's out now. One of the reporters asked Coach Elko about the possibility of Jacob playing in a bowl game, and he did not rule that out. So obviously it's not like a torn ACL or anything like that. It may be a knee sprain, and who knows? I have no idea what it is. But he's out for the remainder of the regular season. So what that looks like is Justin Pickett, big old boy, 6'6", he will move into that right guard slot. And so Duke is now down to, from the beginning of the year in their quote unquote rotation at offensive line, they are now down to their final 5 as far as their initial rotation. So they had about 8 in that rotation. They lost McIntyre, Jalot, and now Monk. And so now we're down to 5. Now we do have 3. You mentioned 3 guys. Caleb Perez, Addison Penn, and Brian Foley are going to provide depth at the O-line. And Addison Penn played some last year. Foley played some last year. So did Perez. They all 3 played some last year. So it's not like we're bare at offensive line, but it's just different. You got different guys that are going to have to step up. So that's a big deal. Obviously, we still don't know about Jalen Coleman. He is practiced for the last 2 weeks. He's been at practice and has been hit at practice. I do know that. So he's back full at practice. I'm not sure what the issue is with him. The game during the games, obviously Eli Pancol is out for the remainder of the season as well. But we saw Samir Hagans and others step right up in his spot this past Friday night. So all that to say, I mean, the injuries could definitely be worse. I mean, let's be real. They could be worse. Fortunately for us, offensive line, running back, wide receiver, we've been able to be deep enough in those areas to kind of take that, you know what I mean, to be able to navigate through those injuries and still play at a high level. And I don't see why it would change.
Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast is here with us on today's show, talking about Duke football as they get set for their final 3 games of the season, including a matchup with Virginia Tech coming up this weekend. Let's take our final break, and we'll have more right after this. Today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our good friends over at Bet Online. If you want to bet on sports, Bet Online is your number one source for all of that. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer. And we have esports betting now at Bet Online. It's outstanding. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at Bet Online as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. As we move forward in final few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, I'm JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Tell us a little bit about the Section 17 podcast. What you got this week, Josh? And if people haven't discovered your show before, they need to. They need to discover it, so tell us about it.
So each week we release an episode where we will dive into the victory, hopefully, from the previous weekend. And then we talk through, obviously, our opponent. This past Tuesday, we released an episode, or Wednesday, we released an episode and had a guest host with us, Cade Parmley, who was an offensive lineman on last year's Duke football team. He came on and hosted with us. One of our co-hosts was out of town, so we brought him on, and it was really neat to get him talking about some of the things that we think we know about football. And he was able to say, look, yeah, you're right, but, or, this, it was really cool to get his perspective. But we try to bring you that, and then we interact on Twitter at Duke FB Talk. Instagram, some, not a ton on Instagram, but we are at Duke FB Talk there as well. And then on Facebook, we're over 1,000 people in our group now. Duke, just searching Duke Football Talk. We're there. We give away T-shirts every week. We try to stay engaged with fans and different people like that. And our goal really, JJ, is to promote the Duke football program. At the end of the day, there's not been enough promotion of the Duke football program. And so that's our goal. Just as you guys do here every day on Locked On Blue Devils, you're pushing Duke athletics, right, in general. And I'm sure you know this. There are certain elements of the athletic department, men's lacrosse, women's basketball, baseball, things like that maybe the common fan doesn't get the details of. And so you guys are able to do that. We try to do that for football specific. That's what we do.
It. Check it out. The Section 17 podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And do this for me too, because, all right, so coming up on Saturday, the game this weekend, we're back at home. We're back at Wallace Wade Stadium. What is the origin story? Because I haven't asked you this in over a year, so maybe we've got some new folks.
Yeah.
What is the Section 17 origin story? And more specifically, what in the world is this name that you guys have put together for the podcast?
Yeah, so 4 of us started 5 years ago, started going to games together 5-6 years ago. So I got season tickets and started going games together. We were cheap, and so we only got the general admission tickets. Happened to be in Section 17. We sat in the top row because we didn't want to walk down and have to walk back up. And so we just started hanging out and following Duke football. And that morphed into creating a Twitter handle. That Duke FB Talk Twitter handle was just kind of like, hey, that way we don't have to use our personal. If we want to tweet about Duke football, it is what it is. And then that morphed into April of 2020. We had previously discussed, I had brought up, hey guys, we ought to do a podcast. No one is doing Duke football podcasting. And we couldn't figure out a way for all of us to get together every week. I mean, it just wasn't gonna happen. And then the pandemic hit. And so out of that, the entire nation was introduced to this thing called Zoom, right? And so we were able to get together. And so we did our first episode in April of 2020, and we've just grown ever since then. And so Coach Elko has hooked us up a couple of times with retweets and helping us get our follower base going. And now we're media, and so we were able to go to press conferences and do all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, we've gone from fans sitting in the stands trying to have educated conversation about Duke football to now somewhat unofficially kind of a part of the program, which is really cool.
But still every week in Section 17, right?
Top row Section 17. Now this Saturday, I will be doing media, possibly. I have all my credentials. I may be up in the media box. I don't know if I can handle it. You got to be quiet up there. You can't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But yeah, they are also this week. It's not only military appreciation this week at Duke,
right?
But it's also Pediatric Cancer Awareness Week. And so one of our other hosts, Brian Kennedy, who you've had on the show here before, Brian's son has been battling leukemia for 2 years. So he'll be honored on the field this Saturday as well. So it's just a special time, not only for the military, but also for the pediatric cancer folks as well.
Thank you for bringing that up because as I've mentioned a good bit as well, being impacted by that at 11 and 14 in my personal life. So yeah, good things happening this week for Duke football. So Virginia Tech, what's the one thing we need to know about this opponent, Josh? I mean, you mentioned should win, 50-50, could win. Why should Duke win this football game? Tell us about Virginia Tech.
Yeah, first of all, they're 2-7, and their first-year coach Brent Pry.
You look at records. Maybe Duke should win this football game.
Correct. If you look at that now, the last 3 games though, they have not won any of the last 3 games, but they have lost the last 3 games by a total of 8 points. So they are right there. So I caution Duke fans. I know a lot of guys are sending us, a lot of fans are sending us their score predictions for this weekend, and there's a lot of blowouts. I don't know. I picked us to win 31-27 because I feel like Virginia Tech is trying to turn the corner. Now, the thing about them specifically, Grant Wells is their quarterback. He's a transfer from Marshall. He does not run the ball well. And so we tend to do okay in those situations. Like we can get to the quarterback some, especially here recently, we've been blitzing a little bit more. They've got a good wide receiver who's got over 600 yards. Caleb Smith. Who was solid there. I mean, anybody that's over 600 some yards at this point in time is pretty good. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Dax Holyfield is huge. I mean, he's like Shaka Hayward with some pounds on him, but just as quick. And so that's really the 3 you got to look for. I think Duke's going to be okay, but I do think it could be a little bit closer than what people think.
All right, so Duke and Virginia Tech on Saturday, noon Eastern kickoff. Watch the game. Support Duke football. We'll see if they can get that 7th win of the season and keep moving forward in the final 3 games of the year. If you're watching us on YouTube, we love hearing from you each and every time, and the comment section is always available. So if you want to send your score predictions in, we certainly appreciate that. I want to shout out YouTube, though, Josh, because a week or so ago, got a comment on one of our chats that we weren't giving the specialists enough love on Duke football.
Okay. Oh, yeah. That's a great thing to bring up.
So Porter Wilson at the punter spot.
Yeah.
And then kicking this year for Duke, we've seen both Charlie Ham and Todd Polino. So, and look, that's an honest call out. We have not spent enough time talking about specialists with the Duke football squad in our chats.
So let's do it. I mean, you got Evan Decker as well as your long snapper. Porter Wilson is an asset. Like Porter Wilson is good for either a down punt at the 5-yard line, or he's good for like a momentum shifting 70-yard boom that just rolls forever. And he is an asset. I mean, the stash, the whole deal. Like he is awesome. And then Todd Polino, man, true freshman. By the way, it's going to be Todd Polino again this weekend, and I think I can say this. From what I can gather, it's probably going to be Todd Polino for the remainder of the season. I don't know that for sure, but that's from what I can gather. Todd Polino was a true freshman, 18-year-old kid on a Friday night. He is informed that, hey, you're the guy tomorrow. This was 2 weeks ago. And he went out and that was the Miami game. And he kicked 6 extra points and a field goal. He was perfect again this past Friday night at Boston College as an 18-year-old kid. Man, I am impressed. And now I've joked with him that he's got to hit a 40-yarder before he can actually be considered the true kicker. He had a 39-yarder the other night against Boston College. So, but no, our specialists are doing well this year. And then special teams in general. I mean, Samir Hagens had the long punt return in the Georgia Tech game. I feel like we've done well there. We haven't botched a lot this year. And so, hey, shout out to all the special teams guys. But, yeah, the specialists are doing great.
a brand new edition of Locked On Blue Devils here today. Do us a favor, please, and subscribe on YouTube. Continue to leave us those comments. If you're listening to this podcast, wherever you get them, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Your support means the absolute world. And for whatever reason, Apple Podcasts love the written algorithm. So please write out those reviews for us to let more people find our show. Josh, I can't let you go without bringing up Duke men's basketball very quickly. The season is back, and the people want to know, and by the people I mean me, who stood out to you? Who were you? Who had good vibes?
Shout out Martin Mitchell, man. Martin Mitchell, I don't care who is on this squad, even when Lively and Whitehead get back. I told you, I believe I told you this on this podcast. He's sneaky, man. Martin Mitchell could sneak. He could sneak up there and lead us in scoring this year because he's like a junkyard dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's a rebounder. He does those weird, and he's got that Euro step, and he's so herky-jerky that he draws fouls really well. Now, I will say this. If the officials are not disciplined, they may call him for some travels that aren't really travels. Because it looks like he travels on some of those Euros, but he's not. It's two steps. So, I love Mark. I love his demeanor. He is wonderful. And then if you're a unathletic basketball guy, you're the guy that goes out and plays at the gym and you're like, man, I'm going to run as little as possible and whatever. Ryan Young has got to be your guy. I mean, the footwork, the head fakes, but he's smart. He plays really good defense. He is a mature, seasoned veteran who is going to get playing time. I mean, don't get that twisted. Ryan Young did not have to start in that first game. They could have very easily put Flip at the 5 and Mark Mitchell at the 4 and gone that route. I think they wanted to send a message with Ryan Young at the 5, him and Flip going back and forth. And by the way, Flip looked good. Double.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all in, man. I'm loving this team. I'm not saying anything about where they'll end up at the end of the season. I'm just thinking when those other two guys get back, they're going to be fun to watch. And I'm enjoying seeing what John Shire's going to do with them.
South Carolina upstate tomorrow night, and then Kansas looming on Tuesday. In the weeks to come, we'll continue to talk Duke football with Josh Cox, but those basketball conversations are going to be coming as well, which I can't wait.
Oh yeah, and we got to talk whenever we get a chance to. We got to talk NBA because our boy Tatum is going to be in that MVP conversation this year. There's no doubt.
Again, we've got so many things to talk about. That's for sure. I need to come clean, Josh. You ready for this?
Well, let me hear it.
I have officially seen Jaden Schutt miss a 3-point jump shot.
Yeah, but let me tell you something about that kid. He's ready to shoot, bro, and he is. They're going to drop.
Right.
He's honestly though, man, he's going to struggle getting in this rotation. I mean, you saw the minutes.
Only played 3 minutes the other night.
And that was with no Whitehead.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think it's going to be a struggle, but it's okay. He's not a 1-year player. That's not his thing. And by the way, before we get off here, congrats to you, my man.
Thank you, man.
Your first ever
men's basketball
play-by-play.
Yeah.
Monday night, Auburn on the SEC Network Plus. Congratulations, man. I know those are different milestones in your career personally. Sure. And that's really cool, man, that you got that opportunity.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate you bringing that up. That was awesome. It was a fun experience for sure. And hopefully many more are in my future. That's the goal at the end of the day. So
yeah, that's really cool, man. Congrats.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to chatting with you again next week. Okay.
Yeah, man. Have a great week. We'll see you later, JJ.
All right. That's our buddy Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast joining us here on today's episode of the show. If you haven't done so already, again, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Also on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. And I'm on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.